Award-winning writer, sociologist, and geopolitical analyst from Canada, Mr. Mahdi Darius Nazemroaya, welcome to The Inside. Well, sir, according to a recent American intelligence report published in the American International Periodical, which specializes in defense and intelligence affairs, it says that the U.S. administration cannot save Egyptian President Morsi any longer from falling, and that his fall is just very imminent. Not just his fall, the fall of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is just imminent. What's your take on this?
Well, I think the way we have to pose this question is, has the United States, and specifically by that I mean the Obama administration, has it been trying to save Morsi and the Akhwan government there? I don't think that they've been trying to save them. I think that they've been letting them take Egypt into a free fall. And they want Egypt in a coma. The U.S. administration there played the Muslim Brotherhood government against the Egyptian military. They have a plan B. If Morsi collapses, this just makes Egypt a much more chaotic place, and it keeps it in a coma. We're talking about the most populous, largest Arab state, the natural leader of the Arab countries. Under Gamal Abdel Nasser's presidency, Egypt was the country that used to stand up to the West.
Is it still the natural leader?
No, it's not. Since Sadat, Egypt has been kept in a coma. It's always been looking internally. After that, Mubarak continued Sadat's policies, and this has always shielded Israel, of course. And the Muslim Brotherhood has just continued the policy. The Muslim Brotherhood has continued what Sadat and Mubarak have done. They've continued to keep Egypt in a coma, and they've continued to protect Israel.
You know, since the fall of Mubarak, chaos has never stopped in Egypt. Rather, it exacerbated. What do you say on this?
I think this is exactly what the United States and its allies like Israel want in Egypt. I mean, they want Arab countries and this region to be filled with weak governments that are internally divided. They're too busy all looking inward to look outward or to have assertive foreign policies and independent foreign policies.
But even inward, it's total destruction and devastation and chaos inside Egypt. I mean, look what's happening nowadays in Egypt.
But this is exactly what the United States prefers. They want Egypt to look inward. They don't want it to be absolute chaos. They want enough chaos for the country to always be kept busy and preoccupied with internal matters.
We're going to discuss more the internal matters and the external matters when it comes to Egypt and its neighbors and its milieu, actually. But here I want to go back to this intelligence report, because they are mentioning and they are saying and they are indicating that some kind of events are going to take place that are going to be so important at the end of this year in Egypt. And it says that the Egyptian military is ready to important events that will take place in Egypt near the end of this year, different from the events that occurred at the beginning of the revolution, where the Muslim Brotherhood got help from Hamas in Gaza to stand in face of the Egyptian military.
All right. Well,
what do you think might happen at the end of this year?
I think that the military you could see a military junta in Cairo. You can see the military take control. Actually, let me rephrase that. We can see the military take back control. What we've had in Egypt all these years has been military governments. Even Mubarak, Sadat, they've all been military governments. They've been wearing, of course, suits and ties like civilians, but it's always been generals in charge of that country and its businesses. And we're just going to see the military take back control of that country. And of course, the United States prefers the military take control, because the military is always guaranteed Israel's security. It's always guaranteed U.S. supremacy in Egypt. And it's always guaranteed that the Suez Canal would be basically under U.S. control in one way or another. So they want the military to take back power. And of course, I want to emphasize this. The Egyptian military, above all things, is an internal police force. It's not there to defend Egypt's sovereignty against outside players. It's there to police the Egyptian people. And this is why the United States has given Egypt the second most military aid after Israel. It's to keep the Egyptian military policing the Egyptian people and to keep Egypt from rising out of its coma, from waking up, from getting an independent foreign policy, and from breaking its peace accord with Israel.
What problems of the West with Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood? Because as far as we know that Egyptian President Morsi is in good terms with the Americans.
Well, Mubarak was on good terms with the Americans. They let him go. Muammar Gaddafi was on good terms with the Americans. They let him go. It doesn't matter if you're good terms with them. You're disposable. You get used, and once they're done using you, they just replace you with somebody else. That's the name of the game. That's the name of America. It's called American foreign policy.
Right.
There's no allies that they'll hold on to.
There's no permanent friends or permanent foes when it comes to foreign policy.
There's no permanent friends or permanent foes, but there's always permanent interests.
Yeah, common interest. Now, according to an article titled "Morsi Digs Himself into a Hole," published in the Arab daily Al-Sharq Al-Awsat, Abdurrahman al-Rashid said about Morsi's government, quote, "Their rivals are increasing. First, there were the leftists and the revolution's youths. Now military men, Salafists, Copts, media figures, intellectuals, the dollar, the stock market, and unemployment have joined them, and more to come, of course. If all these come together, they will be capable of burying President Morsi's government, not just toppling it," unquote.
Well, I think like you said at the beginning of this interview, I think the Muslim Brotherhood is very close to collapsing in Egypt. In fact, I want to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood in far broader terms.
Go ahead,
we're
please.
seeing their decline in the region. People in Libya are not happy with the Muslim Brotherhood there. And I think in Syria, well, we can see in Syria what's happening is Muslim Brotherhood's so-called revolution is in retreat. So their time is about to fade.
It's more of a takfiri revolution in Syria, not just a Muslim Brotherhood.
Sure, the Takfiris are doing the fighting.
Yeah,
but politically, it is the Muslim Brotherhood that's supporting them. The Syrian National Council coalition in Istanbul is the Muslim Brotherhood. It's the basis of
also in Turkey.
In Turkey, we can see Erdogan's AKP party, which is basically Muslim Brotherhood too, is now they're in decline. I don't know if the alternative to them will be better with the Republicans, but we can see all across the region that people aren't happy with the Muslim Brotherhood, and there is a decline. I don't think that President Morsi can hold on, but yet again, I want to mention that Egypt, the United States desires to see Egypt in a coma where it's always looking internally, and this is not just Egypt. This is what the United States likes to see generally for most of the countries in this region and other parts of the world as well.
You're talking here about the military, but how do you see President Morsi's approach to the Palestinian cause?
Well, he's been an absolute hypocrite. I mean, any honest person who's watched President Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood and their supporters, whether they're in Doha, like Sheikh Kardawi, knows that they've been hypocrites about the Palestinian issue. When Gaza was being bombed, most of those people who were saying we need to help our Arab brothers in Syria, we need to go in, we need to send them weapons, it's our duty. In fact, the Saudi foreign minister said it's our duty to help our brothers in Syria. Yet their duty all of a sudden stops when the Palestinians fight for their rights legitimately. We're talking about mostly civilians being bombed. We're not talking about people with guns all the time.
Now, Mahdi, as an observer with in-depth knowledge of the Middle East and North Africa, do we see, or can we say to a certain extent, that what took place in Egypt so far, can we consider it as a revolution?
No, not at all. I mean, a revolution has to be completed with changes. There has to be political, economic, social changes. We haven't seen any of that in Egypt. What I can say is that the Egyptian people, Egyptian society, they're less afraid than ever before. They're more outspoken, and their mindsets have become revolutionary. They're ready to stand up to whatever government, whether it's a Muslim Brotherhood government or a military junta. They're willing to stand up to them. So their mindset has changed. But if you're talking about politics, let's examine the Egyptian state. Have they ended their international agreements and peace treaty with Israel. Camp David Accord is still there.
No.
In fact, the Muslim Brotherhood was very sneaky about it. Before they were elected, they said, we are going to honor and respect all our international treaties. What do they mean by this? They wanted to say we're going to keep our treaty with Israel, but they didn't want to say in a way that offends and angers the Egyptian people. But it's more than just Israel. If we look at the entire military establishment, we look at the foreign ministry, and we look at a lot of the intelligence, which is deeply tied to the Israelis and the Americans, nothing was changed. In fact, a lot of the cabinet ministers, who are a lot of cabinet ministers Morsi has? Are they Muslim Brotherhood cabinet ministers, or are they people from the old regime? Who's the Egyptian foreign minister? Are these not people that are tied to the old regime? I mean, there are some Muslim Brotherhood figures. The Prime Minister and Morsi are there, and the Prime Minister was a civil servant actually during Mubarak's time. He worked for the Egyptian government. So was this a real change, or was it cosmetic? Was it that they replaced Hosni Mubarak, the last pharaoh's face, with a new Muslim Brotherhood face? I mean, it's really cosmetic. Did the economic agreements that the Egyptian state have with outside countries change? No. In fact, under Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood, there's more foreign control of the Egyptian economy than there was before.
Now, we're going to discuss more your assessment of President Morsi now after 1 year in office, and also, you know, this discrepancy that lies between the elite leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood and the grassroots supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. But we have to stop now for a short break.